Welcome to Etown Links, a virtual resource for area businesses working to adapt to the effects of COVID-19. My name is Matthew Fritz, and I'm Associate Professor of Music at Elizabethtown College, and I'm one of your co-moderators for today.
And I
Our
think,
second,
is that my cue, Matt?
that's you!
Okay, I'm Kelly Fetty. I'm here with the Chamber. I'm downtown at the Chamber with signs of more life outside coming. I hear a lot more traffic with each week that goes on, and there's a lot more people lunching outside at Folklore. So I'm Kelly Fetty. I'm here at the office temporarily while we hire a new executive director and a digital media specialist. I'm also here to moderate Etown Links with Matt. I want to keep you up to date on what's going on with the Recovery Lancaster efforts. So visit our Chamber Facebook page or check your email for your newsletter. There's some new exciting things going on with the PPE availability for businesses with 100 or fewer employees. That's open and available now. And word is it's very, very easy to apply and get done with that. And starting on Monday, the up to $35,000 grants for businesses that have 20 employees or less, applications will be open from Monday at 7 a.m. through 6:59 next Friday. It's not first come, first serve. If you want to go ahead now and start getting your paperwork together that you'll need to apply, you can look there on recoverylancaster.com for some updates. I want to always give my shout out to some local businesses, and today it will be BCS Appliance. Harry just left my house. He fixed my dryer, and he went the extra step to give my dog a dog treat and to clean out my lint, and he put it all in a bag for my son to dig through for the treasures that he found in there. For several dollars, and some other, little pocket trinkets, but my son was most excited about the gum and the pretzel that he found, which is unfortunate. So anyway, I'm going to hand it back over to Matt so we can get started with our great panelists today.
Wonderful. Thank you, Kelly. So today's topic will be recorded and placed online at the Etown Chamber's website. Please consider posting a question in the Q&A link at the bottom of your screen. The moderators will share those questions with the panelists as we go along. Our topic today is the new normal, sanitation regulations, sanitation standards affecting restaurants and personal care businesses, physical distancing in retail shops, and dining regulations. We have two wonderful panelists today. I'll begin our second panelist that we'll hear from today is Mark Bruce. He's a certified hazardous materials professional with over 35 years of diverse experience in business management, emergency and disaster management, hazardous materials and hazardous waste compliance, EPA, DOT, OSHA regulatory compliance, infection pathogen control, business risk reduction and mitigation, business sustainability and continuity. Mr. Bruce began Bruce Environmental and Response Management in 2017 and is based here in Elizabethtown, PA. And our first presenter today, our first panelist, is Greg Thomas, who's Director of Food Services at Masonic Village, where he has been active in the Elizabethtown Chamber of Commerce as a board member and as an officer. His work experience includes private sector restaurants and country clubs, contract food service management in corporate, business, and residential living communities. And he has been at Elizabethtown Masonic Village for 16 years, and he does not know my dog that is whining in the background. So I'll turn it over to Greg.
Thank you, Matthew. And thank you, Elizabethtown Links and Elizabethtown College and the Chamber of Commerce for inviting me to present today. Today I'll be presenting on the new normal from a self-operated CCRC food service perspective. This is a comparable impact to public restaurants post-COVID-19. All of us in the food service industry are impacted by challenges with supply chains, availability of products, impacting menu choices and selling prices. Our focus is to continue social interactions for positive mental health and to increase our sanitation practices and enforce and monitor social distancing. The public dining environment is continually forced to challenge processes and procedures as we move through phases post-COVID. The Commonwealth is employing a regional and an industry-specific approach to reopening non-life-sustaining businesses. All business owners should refer to the Commonwealth's phased reopening website for the most current county designations. The significance of red, yellow, green phases for restaurant and retail food service businesses are restaurants and retail food service businesses located in counties while we were designated red were permitted to provide takeout and delivery sales only and were not allowed to service or people to consume food or beverages on their premise. Beginning June 5th, restaurants and retail food service businesses located in counties designated yellow were permitted to provide takeout and delivery sales as well as dine-in service outdoors, as long as they strictly adhered to requirements. Indoor areas, including bars of restaurants and retail food service businesses, must be closed to customers except for through traffic. Customers being served must be seated at a table. Future green phases, all retail food service businesses, including restaurants and bars located in counties designated as being green, are permitted to provide takeout and delivery sales, as well as dine-in service in both indoor and outdoor seating areas, strictly adhering to requirements of maximum occupancy limits. Next slide, please. The self-operated healthcare food service industry is resilient and sustainable. As we look to the future, we assess operational processes to predict what the new normal may look like in order to prepare for post-COVID dining for our elders and their customers. Our relationships with our peers and vendors is critical for our success. Key factors play into the evaluation of the environmental changes that are put into place, affecting our scope of services and the high level of safety and sanitation we are expected to uphold. Next slide. Supply chain. We face supply chain challenges dealing with longer lead times and some complete outages of essential products. Vendor partnerships are important with transparent communication of needs for the distant future. Our experience and a key to our success is working 2 to 3 weeks ahead so that orders may be locked in by the vendor, filled, and delivered when we want them. Supply chain updates are reviewed daily, and it is necessary in most cases for operators to develop, build, and maintain multiple or at least secondary sources of food and supplies. Group purchasing organizations, otherwise known as GPOs, are doing the same to support their customers. These are important measures that help offset and avoid shortages while helping distributors shed inventory from underperforming segments or those businesses impacted by closing manufacturing plants during high-risk scenarios. Processing plant shutdowns or temporary closures, such as meat suppliers, impact restaurants' abilities to produce. According to the Department of Agriculture, the market will remain well supplied and food will continue to be affordable. Our farmers have been hard hit and suffered substantial losses, which may eventually impact raising livestock and plant fewer crops for growing season 2020-2021. Operators should plan for menu shifts and flexibility to change menu items quickly in order to maintain affordable pricing and continue to satisfy their customers. Sustainable, recyclable packaging will be important to reduce the impact of the carbon footprint, and operators will stay the course with their sustainability efforts. Food purchases, receiving, preparation, and serving processes will all need to be assessed and evaluated. Service-related changes have caused some restaurants to install or create food lockers with mobile ordering options for contactless service. Others have implemented sneeze shields at counters. Some have created car hops from the past. They're being re-implemented with a modern twist. Many operations have moved to grab and go, and individually wrapped items, evolving into more of a C-store or convenience store concept. In regards to the environment, food safety enforcement, OSHA may discipline restaurants if they fail to strictly adhere to requirements, which may result in fines, up to and including suspensions of licensure, including liquor license. Standard requirements for people who need or decide to leave their place of residence are strongly encouraged by the Department of Health to abide by the following social distance requirements. Maintain a distance of at least 6 feet from other individuals. Wash hands with soap and water for at least 20 seconds, as frequently and as possible, or use hand sanitizer if soap and water are not available. Cover coughs or sneezes with a sleeve or elbow, not your hands. Do not shake hands. Regularly clean high contact surface areas, and when sick, stay at home. Food safety and sanitation practices are at the top of operators' minds. Although COVID-19 is not thought to be transmitted by food, operators need to promote and demonstrate high standards of food safety, sanitation, and increased hand washing because of public perceptions and to prevent common contact contamination. Social distancing requirements are being put into place for small communal dining. At this point, personal circles or family members will be seated together without guests or other parties nearby. Restaurants are adjusting the layouts of their floor space and service standards. Fundamental foot traffic patterns have been altered and will continually be adjusted accordingly. So long to salad bars and buffets. Self-service models will diminish or disappear due to increased risk of contact contamination. The long-lasting effects on perception that publicly shared utensils and exposed foods present a clear and present danger to health and wellness. Practices during yellow phase are use of self-service food or drink options such as buffets, salad bars, and condiments are prohibited. Condiments must be removed from tables and dispensed by employees upon the request of a customer. Reusable menus, other than digital menus, should be sanitized after each use. Disposable menus are preferred. Refilling food and beverage containers brought in by customers are also prohibited. Follow all applicable provisions of the guidance for business permitted to operate during the COVID-19 disaster emergency to ensure safety and health of employees and the public. Require customers to wear a mask while entering, exiting, and otherwise traveling throughout the restaurant or retail food service business. Face coverings may be removed when seated. Provide 6 feet between parties at tables. If tables or other seating are not movable, seat parties at least 6 feet apart. Ensure maximum occupancy limits for indoor and outdoor areas and post them and strictly enforce. Maximum occupancy is calculated using the following 2 methods. The more restrictive number must be used. Method 1. Limit to 50% of stated fire capacity, or 12 people per 1,000 square feet if there is not a fire code number available. When no fire code number is available for outdoor dining, the 12 people per 1,000 square feet number should be applied. Method 2. Arrange the restaurant or retail food service business so that customers sitting at a table are not within 6 feet of any customers sitting at another table in any direction. Calculate the maximum number of customers that can be accommodated. Do don't use shared tables among multiple parties. Close or remove amenities and congregated areas non-essential to preparation or service of food, such as dance floors, child play areas, interactive games, and arcades. Train all employees on the importance and expectation of increased frequency of hand washing. Then use hand sanitizer with at least 60% alcohol and provide clear instruction to avoid touching hands to face. Assign employees to monitor and clean high-touch service areas. Clean and disinfect any shared items with which customers will come in contact with, such as tabletops, digital menus. Implement procedures to increase cleaning and sanitation frequency in the back of house. Provide physical guides such as tape on floors or sidewalks and signage on walls to ensure that customers remain at least 6 feet apart. Encourage customers ordering takeout to wait in their vehicles. Close or remove amenities and congregated areas non-essential to prep and service of food, such as dance floors. Establish a limit for the number of employees in shared spaces, and verify that dish machines are operating at the required wash, rinse, sanitation temperatures, and with appropriate detergents and sanitizers. Follow all requirements of Department of Ag's Food Code regulations. In regards to self-service beverage dispensers, best practices have been created by the American Beverage Association. Their goal is to help minimize and mitigate the risk of transmission as venues reopen. Operators should provide signage on or near dispensers to show how to properly use equipment to prevent contamination. Employees distribute cups, lids, straws, and condiments to customers. Food contact areas are required to responsibly maintain equipment by frequently wiping down machines and disinfecting areas. Touch screens and push buttons have single-use plastic barriers. If not, hand sanitizer must be stationed near the dispenser. Signs for social distancing must be present. Next slide, please. The hiring processes are similar among restaurants and long-term care facilities. Virtual interviews are held post-offer requirements completed remotely to keep applicants off-site until their first day. The healthcare and CCRC community food services have been positively impacted due to having a stable work environment and continued need. There has even been an increase in temporary employment to keep paychecks coming in for the employee to help support their families. Since restaurants have had to close for a period of time, their committed employees are energized to return to the workplace. Technology advancements. Self-operators anticipate the increase to incorporate modern technology. Cashless transactions are predicted to be the norm. Meal delivery and contactless services are here to stay versus communal dining. Many are adapting to doorstep delivery or curbside pickup, and we are conveniently dining in the comfort of our own homes. On this slide, I've included a quote I read recently, which made me laugh. Hopefully it will for you as well. I found it in Restaurant Development and Design, and I think it says it all. Can you go to the previous slide, please? Sorry about that. So it's in red there on the screen. Order in your underwear and pick up in your pants. Teriyaki Madness in Denver, Colorado, came up with that tagline, and I thought make you guys chuckle today. The impact on mental health is concerning. Humans need social interaction and spontaneity in order to be engaged and live happily. Mealtime is the most social interaction of the day for most, whether it is with family or with friends. Sensitivity to employee morale and individual wellness must be a priority for all operators. Working employees are doing their best to balance employment, personal needs, family needs, spouse, parent, and children's needs. This can put a lot of pressure on them, increasing anxiety of meeting their needs. Some deal with spouses being laid off of work, increased child care, and education when schools are closed, and for some, even illness. Help is available at crisistextline.org for people who are struggling with their mental or emotional health or feeling anxious or overly stressed. Contact the Crisis Text Line by texting PA to 741-741. Next slide. Amelia Levine stated in her May-June 2020 issue in Restaurant Development and Design in an article, Designing Restaurants in Post-Pandemic World. In a post-pandemic world, it is hard to know exactly what the long-term impacts of the pandemic will be. But moving forward, many elements of restaurant design will look the same, with shifts to emphasize convenience and cleanliness. These elements of design will play a critical role in improving operations and efficiencies to rebuild the restaurant industry. Closing remarks. For the most up-to-date, reliable information, please refer to the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania's website for responding to COVID-19 in Pennsylvania at www.pa.gov/guidelines/responding to COVID-19. For further guidance and support and answers to frequently asked questions involving application of business safety order are available from the PA Department Community and Economic Development at dced.pa.gov. The administration recognizes the difficulty of procuring materials business needs to safely resume operations if assistance is needed, to locate masks and other supplies to carry out these required safety procedures. You can visit DCED's business-to-business interchange. Thank you. Thanks again to Elizabethtown Links, College, and Chamber of Commerce.
Well, thank you so much, Greg. Really appreciate your information that you shared with us. And we'll move on to our next panelist, Mark Bruce, and then we'll have some questions here at the end. So if you have any questions, listeners, watchers, please post them in the Q&A at the bottom of your screen.
Great, thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Again, my name is Mark Bruce. I want to thank everyone as well from Etown Links, the Chamber of Commerce, Elizabethtown College, and the organizers of this function, Matt, Kelly, Carolyn, and Brian. And thanks for inviting me to this. I will admit, when I was first asked to join in on this and looked at the topic of sanitation regulations and how it might be affecting our local businesses and restaurants and personal care, I had to scratch my head a little bit because I come from an entirely different background, more or less in the commercial and industrial side of things, but I've learned through this whole situation we're in dealing with COVID-19 that there's a lot of crossover from what I do on a day-to-day basis with some of the concerns our local and small businesses may be confronting, especially on the regulatory side of things. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time on giving you references that you can go to that may be able to help you with a lot of your questions and concerns on how to manage your business through the reopening process and after we get hopefully back to as close to normal as we can get, knowing that there is a great deal of concern that come this winter again, we may be having to face the same old, same old. So next slide, please. just a little bit more about me is I'm part of a number of different professional associations that have a great deal of information that can be helpful for everyone on the call, and certainly all of our local businesses, large, small, regardless of what you do for a living. We all have to deal with certain concerns and regulatory issues, including liability concerns that we all have to be concerned about once we reopen, not only for our business, but also for our employees. The one that I'm closest to is the Alliance of Hazardous Materials Professional, which I'm chair of their board of directors. And we do a great deal of white paper activity on these particular subjects, as well as a bunch of other environmental related topics. Next slide, please. So depending on what your business is and how many employees you have, you probably have to be concerned with and/or comply with a number of regulations that are from the federal government. And where labor is concerned, that would be OSHA, or the Occupational Safety and Health Administration. I know all the businesses I deal with who are my customers and then some all have to comply to OSHA regulations, as well as a bunch of other regulations from other government agencies. So what I did here with this particular slide, and everybody on the call, or if you have friends you want to reach out to, certainly can obtain copies of these slides to access the hyperlinks that are part of the slide to get direct access to this information, which I'm sure you'll find very helpful. And where OSHA is concerned from the federal government is, if you are a business and you have employees, you are responsible for the safety and health of your employees, as well as being cognizant that you have to be in compliance with your business so that you're protecting your customers who may come into your facility, restaurant, whatever it is that you run your business in. Next slide, please. Department of Labor has recently put out a number of news releases, and while they are helpful, there seems to be a great deal of ambiguity with some of their statements. And I'm starting to see that from a number of legal actions that are going on, not necessarily in the state of Pennsylvania, but in a number of areas throughout the country, because one of the big topics that we have right now on businesses reopening is primarily in the concern of liability protection, where it is concerning for their employees and their business, because when an employer is responsible for protecting their employees, and with so much uncertainty of regulatory information, misinformation, uncertainty, it's creating an air of concern that not OSHA, even OSHA can't define very well. So there's a bunch of lobbying going on through legal firms to try and get greater definitions from OSHA that can be relayed to the businesses that would protect them from liability. And I'm sure you've heard a lot of banter going on in the political world with different federal and state congressional folks trying to get waivers and liability protection for businesses as they open. And where is that primary concern coming from? It's mostly in the world of workers' compensation, because a little known secret to many folks is, if an individual who goes to work becomes sick due to whatever pathogen, and in this case, COVID-19, or any other pathogen, for example, influenza, and they can prove beyond any shadow of a doubt that that was contracted by going to work, they could be subject to workers' compensation through the employer's insurance. Next slide, please. This is also the same in the state of Pennsylvania. The state of Pennsylvania's Labor Department and / OSHA comparison is through the Department of Labor and Industry. They have some excellent information also found in this hyperlink on the slide that's in front of you. Again, if you would like access to this, we would be happy to make these slides available to you so that you can go directly to these hyperlinks and obtain the information that you require to find. So I think that the Pennsylvania Department of Labor Industry has some greater specifics in there, especially as it pertains to Pennsylvania businesses. I think that you will find very helpful. And I strongly urge you to take advantage of these resources, not only from the federal government, but also from the state, so that you can derive your own understanding of how the regulatory bodies are looking at what's happening today, so that you can be in a better position to protect your businesses as well as your employees and customers. Next slide, please. This is probably one of the better Department of Labor and Industry links that I found and read, giving a great deal of information regarding employer compensation concerns, as well as some of the facts, answers, and questions regarding COVID-19 and how the two mix, as well as having to deal with unemployment compensation during the process, that if you have employees that had to be unemployed or furloughed through this process, there's some great information in there as well. Next slide, please. This is probably my favorite link to go to. I'm a member of the AIHA, or the Association of Industrial Hygienists of America. They have a number of different professionals who are physicians, PhDs, and certified safety professionals, much like myself, who put together a bunch of white papers for different industries. As you see on the screen here, this is just 5. There's 12 or more different industries that will be available to you in this link, that you can download free. Some of the safety and disinfecting guidelines that would be more impactful to your specific business, rather than a generic one-size-fits-all plan that may not be applicable for a number of different businesses. So again, because of the enormity of this topic, I could probably spend hours talking about it and boring you all to death. I figured that a different approach, by offering you access to information that would be extremely helpful to everybody here in all of our businesses, regardless, again, of your size and what you do, could be very beneficial to you. Next slide, please. This is my personal information. You could certainly write it down. You can call me, you can email me. I'd be happy to chat with you about anything. Just some closing comments regarding some of the things you may have to deal with on your day-to-day when you reopen. And I know Greg brought up a few of them, especially along the lines of disinfecting. There are so many different chemicals that are out there that could be part of an approved list from the EPA, or they might be just all flash on a label that may do nothing for you. I strongly urge you to consider the chemicals that you're using for disinfecting and cleaning. I would prefer that if you used a chemical that is pre-approved by the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, on their what's called N as in Nancy list. And again, if you reach out to me, I'd be happy to give you access to that list. There are hundreds of pre-approved chemicals on there. Some of them can be pretty nasty. So how they're used and how they're handled and how they're stored is going to be of equal importance for your businesses, is along with the proper use of those chemicals. I think people get a little comfortable in using some disinfectants and what they call sanitizers, which don't exist. There's no such thing in my world. It's just a marketing term, because they spray it on and wipe, and it may not be on there long enough for it to have its maximum effect. So I urge everybody that if you're using these chemicals, fully understand what they are. Have safety data sheets on those chemicals so you have an understanding of what they're made of, what they can do, what they won't effectively complete for you, and also how they could be harmful if misused. Again, I could be helpful with any of that if you reach out to me. So I hope I can be of access to everybody, easy access to everybody. I like to believe that I'm easily accessible. And if anybody has any questions, I would be more than happy to make myself available, as well as doing anything I can locally to come and deal with you in person or your business to see how I could be of any help. I hope that things become a little brighter for everybody in the near future. I know that this has been very hard on everybody locally for their business as well as mentally. I know that I'm doing everything I can to keep my sanity, so I'm sure everybody in town is doing the best they can as well. Some businesses being harder impacted than others, but I think that this particular task that Etown Links, the chamber and the college are doing is very helpful. Again, because there's just so much misinformation out there. It's kind of scary trying to figure out who's right and who's wrong. I'm still trying to figure out a lot of that on my own. So I really dive into and use my network of professionals to help me through some of these issues where there's a great deal of cloudiness and uncertainty. So I appreciate everyone giving me the time to make my presentation today, and I look forward to any questions and working with everybody here in town. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Bruce, and thank you, Greg, as well. Just have a few questions, maybe just start off some of the discussion or further the discussion here. How can business owners best reassure customers that it is safe to come to their establishment?
I can answer that question. What I would suggest is simply really making those best practices visible, and word of mouth is probably the strongest way to help customers feel comfortable coming to your establishment. Also posting signs that you're enforcing social distancing and mask wearing and not allowing people without masks to enter your business will show that you're serious about the situation and that you are following the standards that are required.
Thank you. Another question, and this actually might be more in Mark's wheelhouse. Do you have any resources that you recommend for business owners who are maybe training new employees or retraining employees in their proper use of cleaners? You had talked a little bit about some of those cleaners and concerns.
Yeah, I mean, matter of fact, I just got done doing that type of training over the last 2 days. Yes, I'm available to provide that sort of training. As a matter of fact, it's 100% required by law under OSHA and the Department of Labor and Industry for employers to train their employees on the use, storage, and handling of chemicals in the workplace, and that's specifically under the OSHA regulation 29 CFR 1910-1200, otherwise known as the right to know law. So while it's not a lengthy training, it's a very good on-board training for all employers here in town. I would urge you to jump on board with that type of program unless your business has certain OSHA exemptions, but I'm not familiar with any that would be applicable here in town. But yes, that is very true, Matt, that's something I would encourage businesses to do here in town.
Great, thank you very much. Another question for you all. What steps should business owners take if they receive complaints from customers regarding safety and what's being done in their restaurant?
Greg, you want to go at it first?
Thanks, sure. I mean, definitely, respond directly. I think what's most important is to really listen to the customer, let them vent. I talked about mental health and wellness and how everyone has so many things going on that a lot of us don't know about. So simply, I know it happens here with our elder residents that, they're lonely and they don't have the interaction that they necessarily, should be having. And that really does impact, people's responses and sensitivity to situations. So I would say lean in, listen, respond to the best of your abilities, and on the government website, there is a place that they can present a complaint, and hopefully you can stop them from having to go that far just because you listened and cared about what their thoughts were.
Yeah, just to add to that, I've been dealing with upset customers for over 30 years, and while I've matured a little bit over a few, Greg mentioned some very important points. Is that you value their business, you want to listen to them, you don't want to be confrontational. Complaints are feedback, and while it may not be constructive criticism at times, it is a criticism, and they have a certain perception of your business. And it should not be taken lightly, because word of mouth can spread, and with social media, it could make for a really bad day for your business. So complying to regulations, following through on steps, policies, and procedures that your business establishes to run through this situation that we're in, listening to your customers, whether their feedback is positive or not, and Greg hit the key word, listen, because that's the most important thing. Any confrontation that can come from that is just going to be bad for everybody involved. And that's really the best I can add to that.
Great, thank you.
You guys both sound like somebody who's been doing customer service for quite some time. So you know how this goes. I also wanted to add, relevant to that last question, I'm really in touch with these Recovery Lancaster efforts between the Economic Development Company of Lancaster and the Lancaster Chamber and the County Commissioners. And one other piece that group has put out, they sent it to us privately, but it'll be up on their website, and they're going to be doing a webinar on it specifically, is de-escalation, particularly when you have people who come in who are maybe refuse to wear a mask or upset about something related to your new regulations. I will be sending that out actually in the Chamber newsletter to everybody so you can see it. They have it in a document form so far already. Just some tips on how to de-escalate those difficult situations with customers. One other thing that someone had a question about, Greg, you had mentioned these GPOs that restaurants and food services are a part of. So on a similar vein, someone asked whether there are some kinds of co-ops, are there or could there be, where businesses could get some value in volume purchasing, that smaller businesses could be a part of to save money. If they're required to increase the frequency and the type of chemicals, how can they leverage their buying power on those things?
Yeah, I guess what I would suggest is I talked about with your vendors and your peers, building those relationships even stronger. Restaurateurs and foodies are, really peer relationship driven to begin with. But in this scenario, it is important to link up and maybe partner with another restaurant to, contract something with one of your main and your secondary vendors to kind of build a generalized GPO, baseline. And I do, feel free to reach out and connect with me. I can provide some, one-on-one feedback on some vendors that I have worked with that could meet those needs. So it is about partnerships, peer communication. I've been talking to a lot of other retirement communities. We're all in the same business, and while we're competitors, we're also best friends, so that we're keeping the place where we both work as safe as we can for our residents and employees. So this would be treated the same way.
Do you have any further thoughts on that, Mark?
Um, there's always power in numbers. I'm not too familiar, at least in a situation like with businesses co-oping here in town and maximizing their buying power. I think it's a great idea, and I'm sure that the chamber could be helpful for that because, as Greg can attest to, depending on the products you buy and the supply chain's availability to get those products to you, there's probably a lot of commonality on some of these things that could be used here in town, where it's really getting everybody together, cross-referencing needs and see where the commonality is and look to do some bulk purchasing of those things to get discounts. Where that could run into some problems is great. Now you got all this stuff. What about storage or warehousing, and how is it going to get there? Because one of the biggest problems I'm seeing, perhaps others are seeing right now, is that the supply chain is adversely affected right now. So things aren't moving as fast. They're not getting to folks as quickly as they would like those things to arrive. So, I mean, there's logistic issues with that, but I still think in lieu of everything going on, it's probably a good idea to get everybody together and maybe compare notes on where they could save money on co-opting their buying power.
Thanks. And this is something that Recovery Lancaster has heard from businesses that they're concerned about. And that's exactly what this PPE for any businesses with 100 employees or less has rolled out this week. You can literally just go on, put in your business number of employees. If you know a business owner that doesn't use the internet or, you know, in any way, you can help them with it, or we can help them with it. And those are not just masks and gloves. They're also wipes and other cleaning supplies, the things that have been hard for people to get a hold of. And they said the same thing. People are asking them, you know, who are your suppliers? Can we get from your suppliers? And they said, well, not really, because we're getting such a discount on this because we're buying an entire truckload. So please take advantage of that. And they expect to have enough to get out to like 10,000 businesses as soon as possible. You can't special order, unfortunately, because of the way that they're doing it, but it's intended to help every business get a good start and have some of those supplies so they don't have to worry about hunting all that down as they're trying to reopen. Some other questions. Greg, you mentioned about, you know, buffets and salad bars. That's something that's not going to be popular probably again for a real long time. And, you know, what's going to kind of rise in its place. Also about, you know, reusable containers were having a moment right before this happened. I feel like, you know, they were at peak. Everybody's getting on board with bringing your own coffee cup to the coffee shop for them to fill and your own utensils. What now? You mentioned that you've seen some sustainable recyclable packaging come up. What have you seen, and what's the state of that?
Yeah, I think, you know, that's something important that, you know, we talk about, because there was a point in time that we went to, you know, 100% delivery for all of our residents on campus. And it is a challenge to, with the size of our campus and imagining how much plastic could be used, and trying to do your best to keep the earth safe and reduce the carbon footprint. It's definitely a challenge. The positive piece is that I think the awareness is there. Customers, if you do have to increase your prices just a little bit to, you know, not put yourself in a place of loss, they're understanding and really promote those recyclable containers. So in any way possible, if you can do that, it's definitely important. And, you know, Kelly, like you said, it has been a challenge when we were getting into the mode of reusable containers. You know, now we have to pull all the way back to, you know, hopefully recycled containers or recyclable containers. It is a big, you know, flip. So it's a challenge, but do your best. And I think, like I said earlier, people will recognize your effort, and it'll be noticed as a positive, especially in Lancaster County.
Mark, a question for you. You mentioned a little bit about that Nancy list, and I'll have to get that link from you. All those other links you had too, and the ones you mentioned, Greg, I'll be sure to share on the notes in this event. And when we post it on YouTube, we'll make sure that they get on there as well underneath the video. But the kinds of cleaners and stuff, I know you can't go into detail in terms of, what's safe or what's not in detail, but I know a particular issue that has arisen is for businesses or churches that have older architecture and woodwork, things like that, that are high touch areas, doorknobs, things like that, that are high touch areas that need to be cleaned frequently, but also could really easily be damaged. They might be 100, 200, 300 years old in an area like this. Do you have suggestions for people, particularly I would say churches as they try to open up and stay sanitary, what kind of things they might consider using or where they might look to find that info?
Yeah, well, the N list from the EPA, again, is pretty extensive, and from a chemical compound situation, it's all over the board, but a vast majority of those chemicals are alcohol-based or peroxide-based. And depending on how you apply these different chemicals, yes, they can cause damage. We're starting to get, in my industry, starting to see a lot of reports come back from property owners that after certain contractors came in and cleaned their facilities, metal surfaces started to rust on a much faster basis. And it turns out that contractors were choosing to use peroxide-based cleaners that just expedited the oxidation process and wreaking havoc on metal surfaces. It's very difficult to say on which cleaner is going to be best for which surface. You may have to have a variety of different things that could be helpful, especially in your scenario being part of an older establishment. I know, for example, the church I go to is about to turn 300 years old, and I would be very cautious about what's going to be used there should cleaning be required. I mean, they've asked my counsel on that, and I said, well, just stay out of the building, and in 7+ days, the pathogen's going to be dead anyways, and then just use general cleaning supplies like soap and water. But if your business has to use constant cleaning and disinfecting to operate, as Greg pointed out to, and as you might see in some businesses running now, especially in grocery stores where everybody's running around with spray bottles and rags, I can't tell you what they're using. I hope it's effective. I would prefer it to be on the EPA N list, and that they have an understanding of what they're using. But again, every situation is going to be a little bit different, and chemicals serve a different purpose on different surfaces, especially if you start talking about porous surfaces like fabrics and curtains and cushions and things like that. That's a whole other league of discussion. But yeah.
Thanks, Mark. Greg, you had mentioned about in the green phase, businesses having to readjust to what their maximum occupancy would be, based on the fire codes or based on that 12 people per 1,000 square feet. I imagine that's going to be a lot harder for businesses that are on, a sit down model or a sit down and hang out model, like Folklore, where you have people used to kind of coming in, getting a coffee and lunch and working for 4 or 5 hours. And, then how do we figure out who goes and who stays and when, that would affect people. Also, another factor would be high risk population versus regular, which is already a food service designation of, certain dangers. Your organization would be obviously a high risk population, Greg. How does this affect you even more stringently with regulations than perhaps just a restaurant that's mostly general public?
Yeah, I think for personal care and healthcare related fields, again, the peer partnerships and relationships on sharing some secrets of success has been critical. I'm on between 1 and 5 calls a week with outside peers just to see some new habits that they've created to take precautions and hopefully eliminate any risks for transfer of COVID, or for even the security of campus, and having that risk of even guests and visitors coming on campus. It's a challenge because I know with my grandparents and even my parents, it's somebody who you're extremely close to, have had regular contact with prior to COVID, and the mental wellness part to it as well. As you age, it gets lonely. Many of the residents have already lost their spouses and really count on, their friendships. And, we're looking forward to that next phase for us, which is to move into that first step of communal dining, because we have seen, an increase in some, mental wellness situations. It's just so hard hit, and that's why I wanted to add it to my presentation, because sometimes, not everybody thinks about that personal aspect, because we're challenged ourselves with what we're dealing with at work and home. But we also have responsibility to take care of our employees and the people we sell to and or care for. So it's definitely been a challenge, and again, just kind of to reiterate that the more you show your safety precautions and make them visible, constant practices of cleaning, employees that are on the front line, practicing those safety precautions, hand washing, use of sanitizer, mask wearing, is all going to show your customer that, it is at the front of your mind.
That's a great segue, Greg, into our last question for the day before we wrap it up. As regarding some of the food safety precautions in restaurants, that space, is there a value to like HEPA air cleaning units in restaurants, the airflow in the restaurants? And also, I would like to hear your thoughts about masks on employees doing the food prep, particularly in the back. I know it's real hot in those kitchens, but it's also a real dangerous place. So.
Yeah, I can hit on the mask wearing, and then Mark can probably answer the other part of the question. But mask wearing is extremely important, and it's somewhat of a challenge in the kitchen due to the temperature of being around where ovens are on and grills are being used. But you want to wear a mask that's comfortable, that fits properly, to the best of your ability, and it's just a habit and something that we're going to have to get used to. But I would suggest definitely enforcing that, and also the perception to the customer when that employee would come out to the front of house. It just, again, solidifies the importance for you as well.
Yeah, I mean, great points, Greg, where that's concerned. And again, the key word in that statement is perception. A lot of hyperbole is out there right now about the real true effectiveness of masks. Far be it from me to add or subtract from what's being told to folks. I do think it's a healthy step that folks are wearing them, and I do subscribe to the point of it. My mask is protecting you from me rather than it protecting me from you. And I think if people fall back on that, they'll have a better understanding of why it's being worn. Having said that, going to some of your other parts there, Kelly, yeah, having an HVAC system that is clean and with HEPA filtration and even UV protection in the system is highly advisable. I know UV light is very effective dealing with bacteria and viruses. The science is still out on COVID, but between a combination of HEPA and UV, I think it could be very positive for your building. as well as having your ducts and whatnot cleaned in advance. Again, there's hyperbole on the transmission of viruses through an HVAC system. I'm not going to spew on that now because there's just too much going on right now to really put anything definitive out there. Another tactic that's being used and starting to show some positive effect, if you need to clean a large space, ozone generators have had some positive effect in spaces. Now, again, you got to be careful because ozone's not healthy. It's really just a matter of evacuating a space, running an ozone generator, letting it do its thing for a certain amount of time, and then ventilating the space. And that's had some positive results in a number of different areas. So there's a lot of great techniques out there that can be used depending on the severity and the urgency your business requires to be opened back up. Again, I'll always fall back on, if you're in no hurry to open back up, let the thing die. You know, wait 7+ days, open back up, and then you can use general cleaning practices unless there's a threat that would alter you to a more comprehensive remediation.
Thank you both so much. Mark, Bruce, Greg, Thomas, you've been a wealth of information and patience with us. We really appreciate it. They're both giving thumbs ups. And both of you provided a really great intro to me for next week, which is going to be about mental health in the workplace. We're going to have Rhonda Myers, who is a licensed professional counselor in private practice, and Bruce Lynch. He's a licensed psychologist and the director of counseling and health needs at Elizabethtown College. So we're looking forward to having them. You know, Greg, you mentioned about just the necessity of the mental health of not only, you know, employees and customers being people oriented and needing to get together and find ways to do that safely. And Mark, you talked about, you know, worker safety and liability, customers, like we need to find ways to preserve our mental health in all of this. So thank you so much for providing a great link
Thank
to
you.
the next chapter.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us today. And I think Kelly has given us a nice segue into our topic for next week. So we look forward to seeing Etown folks in and around the area. Come join us next Wednesday. We'll be back at our regular time at noon o'clock. And thank you so much for joining us today.